My name is Jack, I'm 28 years old, and I live in a small town in Pennsylvania, where life has always seemed simple and predictable. My life was never particularly easy, but the last few years have gone completely downhill. I grew up in a low-income family, and my mom and I were always very close. My father wasn't around, so everything fell on her shoulders. I always tried to help her because she was my only support in life. After a few failed attempts at finding work in the city, I finally landed a stable job at an auto repair shop in 2021. It wasn't the best job in the world, but it provided stability. I met a girl named Stephanie that same year. She worked at a local cafe. I fell in love at first sight. We started dating, and I truly thought that everything was finally falling into place. At first, everything was going great. Steph and I had a lot in common, and most importantly, she got along wonderfully with my mom. Their relationship was always warm, and I took it as a good sign. But as it turned out, this was the beginning of my personal hell. Now, as I write this, I'm sitting in my room, feeling completely broken. Every day, starting around the middle of last year, brought new blows. First, problems at work, then the economic crisis that hit our income. But the worst was waiting for me at home. I can't even clearly remember when everything started to change. A year ago, I was sure that Steph was going to be my future wife. Now I'm not sure of anything. And why internal struggles have turned into a real nightmare. I feel like I'm trapped between two women whom I once loved and trusted more than anyone else in the world. Every time I see them together, it feels like something tightens inside me. Why did I start feeling like there's something more between them? I can't say for sure. It just started with little things, glances, unspoken conversations. I tried to brush these thoughts aside, telling myself that it was just my fears caused by stress and financial difficulties. But my despair kept growing. The worst part is that I don't know how or with whom to talk about it. My mom. She's my mother. How can I even think about accusing her of something like this? Steph? She still seems the same, although now I can't be sure. But this burden is unbearable. I feel lonely, helpless, and completely lost in this endless cycle of suspicion and pain. I'm afraid of losing them both. But even more, I'm afraid that they've already lost me. Reddit comments. This is terrible, man. I get it when the people closest to you start acting weird. You need to talk to someone because you can't carry all this inside. It'll eat you up. Sounds like you don't trust either of them. I'm not saying you're wrong, but try to gather the facts. Maybe it's all just your suspicions due to stress? Or maybe there's a real reason to worry. I saw something similar with a friend of mine. It destroyed him. Find support, talk to someone about your feelings, even if it's just a therapist. Don't let this consume your life. You need to act carefully. If it's just your suspicions, you could ruin your relationships with both. But if they're real, then you need to know the truth. The worst started in January 2023. At that time, I didn't realize that everything was beginning to fall apart. After the holiday season, I noticed that Steph and my mom were spending more time together. At first, it wasn't strange. They always got along well. But in January, while I was working overtime to save money for repairs on our old car, they began spending too much time alone. I would come home from work around 7 in the evening and notice them sitting together in the living room, laughing or watching shows on Netflix. Maybe it was just my internal state affecting my perception. After all, my job at the auto shop had become a real challenge. The boss kept demanding more, hours were being cut, and bonuses reduced. I was exhausted and constantly on the verge of breaking down. Financially, we were barely scraping by, so I felt responsible for everything: the house, the family, the future. But in January, I noticed something truly strange for the first time. One evening, on my way home, I decided to stop by the local store to buy groceries. It was around 6:45 p.m., just before closing. As I was leaving the store, I saw Steph and my mom together at a small cafe on the main street. They were sitting at the same table, discussing something. As I got closer, I noticed that they weren't just talking, they were holding hands. I froze for a second, not knowing what to do. I was paralyzed. It looked too intimate, but I tried to find a logical explanation. Maybe they were just supporting each other during tough times? I shouldn't be suspecting my own mother and girlfriend of something worse, right? Eventually, I started avoiding these thoughts. I told myself that maybe they were just trying to support me without showing it openly. But that moment at the cafe wouldn't leave my mind. The more I recalled their laughter, jokes, and secretive conversations, the deeper I sank into despair. The internal struggle between my trust in them and my growing suspicions was eating me alive. What if this wasn't just a coincidence? What if I was losing both Steph and my mom at the same time? I couldn't talk to anyone about it because even the thought of it was driving me crazy. I don't know what's going to happen next. I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff with no way out. Everything I've built now seems fragile, ready to crumble with one wrong move. I'm left alone with my fears. Reddit comments. This is a weird situation, but maybe they've just gotten really close. It could be something innocent. But your mental state and feeling of loneliness might be affecting your perception. Talk to them carefully, don't jump to conclusions. Bro, when I read about that moment in the cafe, it raised a red flag for me too. That doesn't seem normal. But before you do anything, make sure you have more evidence. Don't rush, but keep your eyes open. If you're feeling something, trust your instincts. I didn't notice the obvious until it was too late. If you have an internal discomfort, it's not always unfounded. I've been in a similar situation, when close people start acting strange, and you feel like it's not just a coincidence. Talk to someone neutral. And don't wait too long if it keeps happening. In February 2023, I felt like control over my own life was slipping away completely. If you had asked me 6 months ago what it means to feel betrayed, I would have said I had no idea. But now I can describe it word for word. It's that feeling when you come home from work and realize there's no longer any space for you in your own home. It had been about 3 months since that night when I saw Steph and my mom at the cafe. With each passing week, the situation only got worse. My shift at work ended at 6 p.m., and I'd get home by 6:30. But lately, I felt like I was coming back to someone else's house. Mom and Steph were together almost every evening. They'd make dinner without me, watch movies, laugh at jokes I didn't understand. I'd sit in the kitchen, pretending everything was fine, but I could feel the ground cracking under my feet. One evening, it was February 12th, I came home after a long day. Tired, I opened the door and heard them laughing again in the living room. But when I walked into the room, they suddenly went silent. It hit me hard. There was a strange silence in the air, as if something was hiding behind their eyes. They quickly changed the topic of conversation, and that made me even more worried. What were they hiding? I started wondering if maybe they wanted to tell me something but didn't have the courage to. Maybe they were ashamed. And I realized that this situation was slowly but inevitably killing me inside. Steph started avoiding me. We used to talk for hours in the evenings, but now our conversations were short and superficial. She talked more to my mother than she did to me. My own girlfriend. My mother. I started feeling like a stranger in my own life. I tried to have an honest conversation with Steph, but she always brushed it off, saying everything was fine, and that I was just overthinking things. In March 2023, I realized I couldn't take it any longer. I came home after an especially hard day at work. This time it was March 20th. Once again, their laughter, the same feelings. I walked into the living room and noticed Steph's phone on the table. It lit up, and a message from my mom appeared on the screen. "I'm looking forward to tomorrow. It's going to be great." My heart stopped. Tomorrow? What exactly were they so excited about? I felt sick with thoughts. A terrible fear gripped me, that this was the end. I had lost the two most important people in my life. And it was all happening right under my nose. I stood there, holding the phone, not knowing what to do. Should I ask them about it right then? Should I start a fight? But I was paralyzed by the thought that it might be true, and that it would break my heart completely. Man, the situation is really tense. That moment with the phone makes you wonder. Maybe you should talk to them. But be careful. Before you accuse anyone, make sure you know the truth. It's terrible when the two people you trust the most could be hiding something behind your back. I'd be scared too. You really don't know what will happen if everything comes out. But staying silent isn't the answer either. I've been in a similar situation. The feeling is horrible, like you're a stranger in your own home. If you can't open up to them and talk about your feelings, it will destroy you from the inside. You have the right to know what's going on. It sounds like something is really happening outside of your control. Talk to them, but be ready for whatever answer you might get. After I saw the message on Steph's phone, I couldn't just wait anymore. This was no longer suspicion or a feeling that something was wrong. It had become a reality I couldn't escape from. The next day, March 21st, I decided to act. When I came home from work at 6:15 p.m., I overheard their conversation while standing in the hallway. They were talking about how great their time was last week, and for the first time in months, I felt that this was about more than just friendship. A wave of fear washed over me, and I couldn't stay silent any longer. I walked into the room, not thinking about the consequences, and immediately asked, "What's really going on between you two?" The silence hit the room like a punch. Mom and Steph looked at me as if I had just shattered whatever was left of our lives. They didn't know what to say. Steph glanced at Mom, then at me, and I saw fear in her eyes. My mother was the first to break the silence. "Jack, you don't understand. We're just trying to support each other, to help you." But I couldn't listen to excuses anymore. My head was full of terrible thoughts. Should I leave? Did they really think this was helping me? Their explanations no longer made sense. I couldn't keep listening to their words. I ran out of the room, and my world fell apart. That evening, I went to the nearest bar. It was the Old Spring, on the corner of our street, where I sometimes went with friends after work. I sat at the counter and ordered a whiskey, not knowing what to do next. I remember it was 8:30 p.m. when I took the first sip. Looking at my phone, I realized that things wouldn't resolve themselves at home. They hadn't called, they hadn't texted. Maybe they didn't care? Or maybe they were too caught up in their secret to think about me. Sitting there, I felt my life crumbling to pieces. I thought I had support and love, but now these people seemed like strangers to me. I could no longer trust either my mom or Steph. Their bond, which once felt warm and close, now felt like a massive wall that had shut me out of everything I loved. That night, I went through many options for what to do next. I could go back home and try to understand what they meant, but I was already too broken to start that conversation again. I couldn't understand them. And now I had to make a decision. Should I completely cut ties with both of them? Or try to salvage something? Reddit comments: "Man, this is just unbearable. I believe you did the right thing by asking them directly." But their reaction raises even more questions. They couldn't have just been supporting each other. There's something more here. I'm literally shaking from how they treated you. I've been in a similar situation with my ex. I understand how hard this is to go through, but trust me, if their relationship is hiding behind secrets, it will never end well. Whiskey at the bar after such a conversation. I feel every word. You need to take some time to process everything. But don't wait too long. If they're hiding the truth, you deserve to know it fully. You need to step away and look at this from a distance. If they can't explain everything honestly, then you shouldn't drag yourself further into this mess. It could break you even more. Here's the translation. The day after my breakdown at the bar, I woke up with a terrible headache and a broken heart. It was around 9:30 a.m. I wasn't in a hurry to go back home, so I went to the old Riverside Cafe where I used to have breakfast when life felt normal. I ordered a black coffee and toast with jam, sitting at a table by the window, trying to figure out what to do next. I could no longer hide from the truth. My life was in freefall, and I didn't see a way to stop it. I felt like I was losing not only my girlfriend but also my mother. The two people who were most important to me had become strangers. And I didn't have the strength to fight anymore. With each passing day, I felt like I was drifting further away from myself and my former life. All the plans I had made, all the dreams Steph and I had shared, now seemed empty. Around 12 p.m., I decided to go home and settle everything once and for all. When I walked into the house, they were both sitting in the kitchen. It seemed like they were waiting for me. I felt the tension hanging in the air. This was the moment I realized there was no easy way out of this. I sat down in front of them and directly asked, "What's going on between you two? And don't tell me it's just friendship. I can see it's more than that." Mom and Steph were silent again. It was clear they hadn't prepared for this conversation. Mom was the first to speak. "We never wanted to hurt you, Jack. It just happened. We didn't plan for this." My hands were trembling. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom continued, "We really started getting closer when you worked late. I was lonely. And Steph, she was lonely too. We found support in each other. It got out of control. I couldn't process it." Steph sat with her head down. She didn't say a word. I felt like I was being torn apart from the inside. Everything I had built, all the relationships, all the years of support and care, seemed to vanish in an instant. They hadn't been honest with me. And that was the worst part. I stood up and walked to the door without saying a word. Stopping for a moment, I turned and whispered, "I can't be part of this anymore. I'm leaving." At 1:30 p.m., I packed a few of my things and left. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing: I could no longer live in that house. My heart was shattered. Steph and Mom stayed behind, silently watching me go. Reddit comments: "This is the worst kind of betrayal. Seeing the two people you trusted the most turn into something else. You did the right thing by leaving. They don't deserve your patience. Maybe the best thing you did was leave. Sometimes there's no point in trying to save something that's already broken beyond repair. Start a new life, without their lies and deceit. I've been in a similar situation. It hurts, I understand. But you're stronger than they are. They had no right to hide this from you. You're better off finding your own path and starting fresh. It hurts to read this. But you did the right thing. Remember that your feelings matter, and you have the right not to be betrayed."